So you've seen some of these graphics that Chris had, but kind of give you a little overview of what's going on, detailed overview of what's going on actually inside things here. So what I want you to pay attention to are these lines that are coming off of each terrace and entering into the next terrace. The site here, it's hydrologically connected, so as the flow is coming downhill, it's running through each terrace and then getting to an under drain and then making its way down into the terrace below, then ultimately discharging at the bottom there. So what's going on inside these terraces, you can see that the trees are sitting in nice engineered biosoil, nice infiltrating soil, but they're wrapped in a clay berm. So again, as that flow is coming in, it's percolating through, infiltrating through, and then eventually getting to under drain and then getting down into the next terrace below. We have over 280 trees were planted, 40 shrubs were planted, and approximately 5,000 feet of terrace. Also, that includes the under drains. I think you saw this earlier. Just an overview shows you what's going on. And Chris pointed out that impervious area up top is a key contributor to this site. So some of the plants that were up there, if you can see that, the legend's not too clear, so I apologize about that. But we put a lot of native trees in. We had some issues with a couple of them, had to replant them, but out of 280 trees, if you only had to replace 12, 15 of them, you're doing pretty well. It's been pretty successful. And this has been completed in 2011, so these trees are a good 5-6 years old now and thriving extremely well. So this is near completion. Pay attention to this erosion control mat, this geotext that Chris pointed out. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is what it looked like when the site was almost buttoned up. There's still a few more terraces below that needed to be wrapped up a little bit. But they worked from top down, and this is what it looked like. And then 3 to 4 months later, we started seeing signs of this. The water was not infiltrating through the berms like it was designed. We weren't really sure what was going on. So we actually hired a geotech to come out and do an investigation and help us find an answer, like what's the conclusion, what's going on, why are these not infiltrating they're supposed to. So upon a lengthy investigation, he found a significant amount of clay wrapped up in the lower berms. The upper berms were in pretty good shape. They went in first, and honestly, we had eyes on them pretty closely while they were going in, and I think we didn't pay much attention to the lower berms, figuring that we didn't need to. And it turns out that the contractor, when he was putting in the engineered soil, that biossoil, he was mixing that on site. And when he was doing that, he was actually pulling in a bunch of native clay. So you can see specifically on this bottom left photo, your water's going to make it through there, but it's just going to pond. It's not going anywhere once they get to that layer of clay. So not the entire berms, the terraces were not wrapped, or they weren't all infected. We had portions that they were. So we had to have that geotech come out and do a series of infiltration drains, or infiltration tests, to determine, where the exact locations that are affected with that clay. So it was a pretty neat experience, and seeing them do it on site. It's a modified double ring filtrometer test, if you're familiar with that. So they did that throughout, a series of these terraces, just to isolate those areas that were infected with that. And then eventually, once we did determine, where these areas were, the contractor had to go back in, pull out the contaminated soil and replace it. So while this was going on, SC1 began to using this asset management tool. So we started storing all of our data for all of our DMPs, all of our GI sites in this tool here, and it's a way for us to track, to inspect, to keep eyes on these systems while they're out in the real world. This shows, you'll see on the dates on the left, the top few dates, there's 12 of them. So at this site, we have 12 inspections that are occurring. So each terrace gets an inspection. And, we go out and look at, a series of different things. Here's a few specifics that we look at. This is one of our checklists that we look at. So we look at vegetation, we look at erosion, we look at sedimentation, just a handful of different things, tell us how well these things are working, how well they're not working. So one of the challenges up front was getting, back to this erosion mat, getting the vegetation to grow through it. Basically, because of the hills, the slope of this location, the mat needed to be extremely beefy and thick. So it was extremely beefy and thick. And the vegetation struggled to get through. So it took us some work to get, early on to get the vegetation actually out and established. Obviously, we established our trees. And them sitting in that engineered biosoil, which infiltrates well, it's not holding a lot of water. So our trees are drying out. So we had to make sure that we had water on our trees, which is, again, it's a large site. So that was a pretty big undertaking. We saw excess nutrients coming out of our drains that, again, hydraulically connected to the next terrace below. We just think that was due to excess the nutrients coming from the slow-release fertilizer that was located inside some of the trees that were planted. Just aerial view of the site. Now, we have under drains. Again, these are the emergency overflows that are inside the terrace. We got to keep these things clear. Trash, again, from that apartment complex up top. They're throwing stuff down, and that gets discharged into our site. So we have to make sure that debris and trash is cleaned up. Trees, we had, again, approximately about 15 of them had to get replaced. But this is what it looks like today. It's thriving, it's doing really well. We're thrilled with it. Maintenance, all we do right now is we trim out these berms, clean out these berms, and for the most part, we let it go. We're looking at actually monitoring monarch waste stations and whatnot. Hopefully, we'll get to that this year. So we're doing some monitoring. Chris shared some of the data. We're going to continue to collect this data and watch this site as it continues to grow, see how well it does perform. And as of right now, Chris is throwing out some of that data, and this site is doing extremely well for us. So we're very pleased with it. With that, that concludes it, and I'll turn it back over.